$50 million reduced to ashes was the ultimate price for a single vicious whisper. When socialite Victoria leaned in, maliciously telling the underworld's most brilliant financial queen she was simply too big for a mafia king, she crossed a lethal line. She explicitly signed her own brutal death warrant. Skylar Hayes never apologized for the space she took up in a room. In a clandestine underworld dominated by razor-thin trophy wives, silicone enhancements, and men who viewed women as easily interchangeable accessories. Skylar was an anomaly. She was a deeply fat woman, possessing a lush, unapologetic figure that commanded attention the second her Louboutins clicked against marble floors. But her weight wasn't the only thing that made her formidable. She possessed the sharpest financial mind on the eastern seaboard. Skylar ran the Velvet Ledger, an ultra-exclusive, completely off-the-books banking system that washed millions of dollars for the most dangerous cartels, syndicates, and corrupt politicians in the country. People didn't just respect Skylar, they feared her. She held the account numbers, the offshore routing codes, and the buried secrets of every powerful man from New York to Miami. Yet despite her terrifying influence, the social politics of the Mafia wives' circle remained agonizingly shallow. Behind their manicured hands, the wives of underbosses and capos would whisper. They sneered at her size, unable to comprehend how a woman who wore a size 22 could wield more power than all of their husbands combined. Lorenzo Costa didn't care about the whispers. As the newly crowned head of the Costa Syndicate, Lorenzo was a man carved from ice and violence. He was devastatingly handsome, possessing dark, calculating eyes that missed absolutely nothing. When his father was assassinated, Lorenzo took control of the family empire with a ruthless efficiency that left the streets painted in blood. But behind the iron fist of his reign was a quiet, consuming obsession. An obsession with Skylar. Their relationship was an unspoken, highly guarded secret. To the outside world, they were strictly business associates. Skylar managed the Costa family's illicit wealth, ensuring that millions in racketeering money came out looking like legitimate real estate investments. But behind the reinforced steel doors of Lorenzo's penthouse, the dynamic shifted entirely. Lorenzo worshipped her. He worshipped the soft curve of her hips, the sharp bite of her intellect, and the way she never flinched when he walked into a room covered in another man's blood. To Lorenzo, Skylar wasn't just beautiful. She was a goddess, sitting on a throne of dirty money. But secrecy breeds opportunists. Enter Victoria Hastings. Victoria was the heir to Hastings' heritage, a global luxury PR and modeling empire that catered to the ultra-rich. She was everything society deemed perfect, tall, statuesque blonde, and devastatingly thin. Victoria was also completely devoid of a moral compass. For years, she had been using her high-fashion import channels to smuggle conflict diamonds and military-grade weaponry for the Volkov Bratva, a fierce rival of the Costa family. Victoria had her eyes set on Lorenzo Costa. In her twisted, arrogant mind, taking Lorenzo as a husband would solidify her as the undisputed queen of the city. She believed a man of Lorenzo's stature required a woman who looked like her on his arm, a beautiful, fragile-looking bird, to offset his violent nature. She viewed Skylar as nothing more than an oversized bookkeeper, a glorified secretary whom Lorenzo tolerated solely out of financial necessity. The tension had been brewing for months. Victoria made it a point to undermine Skylar at every high society gala, charity auction, and underground casino opening. She would offer passive-aggressive comments about Skylar's diet, accidentally spill champagne on Skylar's custom-made dresses, and loudly wonder why Lorenzo didn't hire a more presentable face for his front companies. Skylar, a woman who regularly negotiated truces between warring cartels, usually let the petty insults slide off her back like water. She knew her worth. She knew what happened in Lorenzo's bed, and she knew the exact net worth of Victoria's heavily leveraged company. But the constant chipping away at her physical appearance tapped into an old, deeply buried vulnerability. Growing up heavy in a world that demanded thinness had left scars, and Victoria knew exactly how to press her perfectly manicured nails right into those old wounds. The tipping point arrived in mid-December at the clandestine winter solstice gala, hosted at the Valenti estate, a sprawling, fortified mansion in the snow-covered hills of upstate New York. It was the premier event of the underworld, a place where multi-million-dollar drug routes were negotiated over beluga caviar and vintage champagne. Skylar arrived looking nothing short of breathtaking. She wore a custom-tailored, deep emerald velvet gown that plunged at the neckline and hugged every lush curve of her body. Rubies rested against her collarbones, a silent gift from Lorenzo that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. As she glided down the grand staircase, conversations paused. Lorenzo stood across the ballroom, flanked by his terrifying lieutenants, Gregory and Vincent. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. When his eyes locked onto Skylar, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The possessive dark hunger in his gaze was unmistakable to anyone paying close attention. But Victoria Hastings wasn't paying attention to Lorenzo's eyes. She was only paying attention to her own bruised ego. Victoria had spent the entire evening trying to corner Lorenzo, leveraging her European fashion contacts to propose a mutually beneficial partnership. Lorenzo had dismissed her with barely a glance, his attention perpetually drifting back to the emerald-clad woman holding court near the high-stakes baccarat tables. Humiliated and fueled by an expensive cocktail of cocaine and arrogance, Victoria decided that if she couldn't win Lorenzo's attention with business, she would systematically destroy the woman holding it. Around midnight, Skylar excused herself to the estate's sprawling East Wing powder room to reapply her lipstick. The room was a lavish display of gold leaf mirrors and rose-colored marble. As Skylar leaned over the sink, blotting a deep crimson color onto her lips, the heavy oak door clicked shut and locked. Victoria